Are you ever just tired? Does that affect your creativity? And how do you know when it's time for a break? Well, let me tell you, I have been pretty tired lately, and that has led me to think some thoughts that I would like to share with you. Welcome to Allie on Life, where I believe that every life is a beautiful story, and I want to help you tell yours. Well, it is summer. I don't know what that looks like for you, but around here it is busy. It's busy, a different kind of busy than the school year. Baseball and softball have wrapped up finally, and things are just looking a little bit different now. There are summer activities that are just ongoing, and there are camps that come and go, and there are vacations and seeing family and spending time with friends and all the fun things that you do in summer. And they're all great. But at some point, you just realize that, wow, things are really busy and they just don't stop. I mean, I got a part-time job as a baker to kind of help loosen up the tight family budget a little bit, and my schedule is a mess. Times are always crazy, but I've been thinking maybe I need a break. And then that got me thinking about what we talk about as creatives, as far as like flow and energy and the need for self-care and all of those important topics. So I just kind of wanted to unpack that a little bit, how creativity and energy are tied together, how self-care affects that, and when it's time to take a break. I do have an idea of what that looks like for me. So let's talk a little bit about finding that necessary rhythm and flow that gives us maximum creativity. Creativity thrives in flow. I mean, you hear a lot lately about like flow state and different things that people use the word flow in, but it's basically this idea that once it's going, it keeps going, and you get in that state where you feel like you're doing your best work and creating your best things. And what can you do to create that state? Right? Other people might illustrate it in different ways, but I always think about it as priming a pump. We used to go camping a lot, and there's always, some kind of pump out there at the campground with the handle, and you got to start out working that thing. There's no water coming out. Then finally, you just keep going, and eventually there comes this little trickle of water. Keep going some more, and then eventually the water comes out, and you can use that for all kinds of things, depending on what kind of campsite it is. It might be drinkable water, or you might just use it to cook or clean or do those kinds of things. But the point is, you have to get it primed and ready to go before it'll really start flowing. So what is it that we do to prime the pump of creativity and keep it flowing? Well, energy and creativity are tied together. So I think energy really helps create that flow state. When I'm feeling a lot of energy, sometimes I'm feeling too much energy to be creative. There's just ideas pinging off all of the time, and I have to find some way to focus. Drink some coffee or something. Oddly enough, that helps me focus. Or maybe I'm not feeling enough energy and I'm feeling very lethargic and not creative at all in that space. And well, coffee helps that too. I need a lot of coffee in order to function as a human being and as a creative, and that's just fine. Nothing wrong with coffee, but you have to find that right place of energy in order to be creative, or at least I do. And there's working in spite of whether you're feeling it or not. That's really important to me. A lot of people want to talk about, finding their muse and waiting for the creativity to just strike like lightning. How often are people struck by lightning? Not that often. And how often are people struck by creativity? Not that often. Sure, it can happen, and it can happen fairly frequently, but you can't depend on it as when you're going to be creative is only when the creativity strikes. That's a miserable way to work. You're not going to get much work done that way. And if your work is creative, then you have to find some other way to continue to have that creative work, whether creativity strikes you like lightning or not. So that's why it's really important to me to have a schedule, to have a routine, to have a rhythm, to understand where in the day I'm feeling most energetic and creative, and putting those time blocks in place so that I can do those things in the best way possible for me, which sometimes is not in the most ideal time. And I have to recognize that in my life. But eventually there comes a point when everything just is drained and I don't have anything left to give. And that's when self-care becomes important. Now, self-care is a tricky topic. It's very tricky for me because anytime you start talking about self, I get a little feeling, because I don't want to be a self-focused, self-absorbed, selfish person, right? those words all involve self. So then when you start talking about words like self-care and self-esteem and self-help, I start thinking of the other words. Selfish. Selfish. Is self-care selfish? It's a great question. Does that depend on the kind of self-care you're talking about? Maybe, maybe not. You know, there's been a lot of pushback lately on the thought of self-care as like wine and a bubble bath and all that kind of stuff. Although, you know, nothing wrong with a good bubble bath, and that can be a good form of self-care. And I do that fairly regularly. But it can be something like watching a show. It could be putting away laundry because that laundry is driving you crazy and it is draining your creativity. So putting away the laundry might be your form of self-care. It might be creating the routine that you need in order to have your most creative moments at the right times when you need to have them. It might be going and getting the groceries, even though you maybe don't like it very much because, you know, you gotta eat. And eating good food is better than going to get fast food all the time and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Self-care can look different for a lot of different people. What's important is to understand what it looks like for you and what it looks like at different times and different seasons in your life. You know, is it your little break at the end of a good week where you've gotten a lot done? Or is it taking the time that you need to stop and take care of yourself before you run out of creative energy or energy to take care of the people in your life or to take care of yourself? Self-care is important and it helps create that flow that we need in order to be creative. Now, how do I tell when I need a break? Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I just stop because I have to, because I don't have anything left to keep going. But most of the time, life just goes along. It's very busy and I have a lot of energy and I just keep going and doing all the things, and it's probably too much. It's always too much. Everybody knows that I do too much. I know it. People around me know it. They tell me. But it's okay because I can, see? But then there are times when I realize that I can't. Creativity is, you know, wearing thin, and I'm feeling like when Bilbo describes to Gandalf, feeling like butter spread over too much bread, right? At that point, there's a problem. And I have to stop and take a break. And sometimes it's good to just take a break, even if it's not feeling stretched, even if there's not a problem, because we need breaks. I learned this last year, actually, that recently in my life. Yes, it's true. I went on a vacation with my family and I said, you know what? This time I'm not going to take any work with me. I'm not going to work on my book. I'm not going to work on my business. I'm not going to work on, you know, any other projects that I have going on. I'm just going to set all that aside and focus on having a vacation with my family. And the most interesting thing happened. Almost all I could think about were new ideas for things that I wanted to do, or new ways to work on things that I was working on, or new angles on projects that I hadn't thought of before, or solutions to problems that had just been bothering me like crazy. And earlier in the week, I thought this is ridiculous because here I am intentionally not working and not taking any of this stuff with me, and now all I can do is think about it. But then I realized this is actually a good thing because by taking a break from doing the work, I was able to think differently about the work. And you don't lose those thoughts, right? I mean, I still had my phone. I could take notes or paper, you know, could write them down and that kind of thing. Or I find that with the really greatest ideas, the ones that make the most impact, you don't forget them. You remember them. They stick with you because they're that good. And it was just a good reminder for me, or maybe a good lesson that I learned for maybe the first time in my life, that taking a break is essential and can help you be more productive when you come back to your work. You know, you've primed that pump, you've got that water going, but then, you know, shut it off every once in a while. Let it rest. Give it a break. Come back to it later. Well, what about you? Do you need a break? Can you tell when that time comes? And what do you do for self-care? Tell me all that in the comments because I want to know. Now, in case you couldn't tell what all this was leading up to, I am going to be taking a break from this channel. I'm going to take a 6-week hiatus, so you won't see any new content from now until the beginning of September. And in the meanwhile, I'll be taking a couple trips with my family, a vacation, and working on some other things. But I am mostly going to keep working on this channel, and we will come back with a refresh, some new content, maybe a little bit of a new look with things in September. So if you have just really been enjoying this content, that is awesome. And I thank you for joining me on this journey. We're going to come back to it in just a month or so. And meanwhile, you can check out some of my old videos. And if there's anything that you would love to hear me talk about in the future, put that in the comments and we may make that video. We very likely will make that video. We love to make those videos. That is all for today and all for now. Thank you so much for watching. Now get out there and tell your story because someone needs to hear it.